Dawes said. I'm willing to pay you for it. Not money, of course. Information. What do you want? Miller asked. Stop looking for Juliet Mao. No sale. I'm trying to keep the peace, Detective, Dawes said. You should hear me out. Miller leaned forward, elbows on the table. Mr. Serene, jiu-jitsu instructor, was working for the OPA. The timing of Dawes' visit seemed to be saying so. Miller filed that possibility away, but said nothing. Mao worked for us, Dawes said. But you guessed that. More or less. You know where she is? We don't. We are looking for her. And we need to be the ones to find her. Not you. Miller shook his head. There was a response. The right thing to say. It was rattling in the back of his head. And if he just didn't feel quite so fuzzy. You're one of them, Detective. You may have lived your whole life out here, but your salary is paid by an inner planet corporation. No, wait. I don't blame you. I understand how it is. They were hiring, and you needed the work. But we're walking on a bubble right now. The Canterbury. The Frinby station. Yes. She was on the Scopy line, Dawes said. And when Miller didn't immediately respond, he added, the freighter that Mars used as bait when they killed the Canterbury. Miller thought about that for a long moment, then whistled low. We don't know what happened, Dawes said. Until we do, I can't have you stirring up the water. It's muddy enough now. And what information are you offering? Miller asked. That's the trade, right? I'll tell you what we find after we find her, Dawes said. Miller chuckled, and the OPA man went on. It's a generous offer, considering who you are. Employee of Earth, partner of an Earther. Some people would think that was enough to make you the enemy too. But not you, Miller said. I think we've got the same basic goals, you and I. Stability, safety. Strange times make for strange alliances. 2 questions. Dawes spread his arms, welcoming them. Who took the riot gear? Miller asked. Riot's gear? Before the Canterbury died, someone took our riot gear. Maybe they wanted to arm soldiers for crowd control. Maybe they didn't want our crowds controlled. Who took it? Why? It wasn't us, Dawes said. That's not an answer. Try this one. What happened to the Golden Bough Society? Dawes looked blank. Loca Greca? Miller asked. So hero? Dawes opened his mouth, closed it. Miller dropped his beer bottle into the recycler. Nothing personal, friend, he said. But your investigative techniques aren't impressing me. What makes you think you can find her? It's not a fair test, Dawes said. Give me a few days. I'll get answers for you. Talk to me then. I'll try not to start an all-out war while you do, but I'm not letting go of Julie. You can go now. Dawes rose. He looked sour. You're making a mistake, he said. Won't be my first. After the man left, Miller sat at his table. He'd been stupid. Worse, he'd been self-indulgent, drinking himself into a stupor instead of doing the work, instead of finding Julie. But he knew more now. The Scopuli, the Canterbury, up his terminal, searching what there was about Julie's ship. After an hour, a new thought occurred to him. A small fear that grew the more he looked at it. Near midnight, he put a call through to Havelock's home. His partner took 2 full minutes to answer. When he did, his image was wild-haired and bleary-eyed. Miller? Havelock, you have any vacation time saved up? A little. Sick leave? Sure, Havelock said. Take it, Miller said. Take it now. Get off station. Someplace safe if you can find it. Someplace they're not going to start killing Earthers for shits and giggles if things go pear-shaped. I don't understand. What are you talking about? I had a little visit with an OPA agent tonight. He was trying to talk me into dropping my kidnap job. I think he's nervous. I think he's scared. Havelock was silent for a moment while the words filtered into his sleep-drunk mind. Jesus, he said. Who scares the OPA? Chapter 13. Holden. Holden froze, watching the blood pump from Shed's neck, then whip away like smoke into an exhaust fan. The sounds of combat began to fade as the air was sucked out of the room. His ears throbbed, and then hurt like someone had put ice picks in them. As he fought with his couch restraints, he glanced over at Alex. The pilot was yelling something, but it didn't carry through the thin air. Naomi and Amos had gotten off their couches already, kicked off, and were flying across the room to the 2 holes. Amos had a plastic dinner tray in one hand, Naomi a white 3-ring binder. Holden stared at them for the half second it took to understand what they were doing. The world narrowed, his peripheral vision all stars and darkness. By the time he'd gotten free, Amos and Naomi had already covered the holes with their makeshift patches. The room was filled with a high-pitched whistle as the air tried to force its way out through the imperfect seals. Holden's sight began to return as the air pressure started to rise. He was panting hard, gasping for breath. Someone slowly turned the room's volume knob back up, and Naomi's yells for help became audible. "Jim, open the emergency locker," she screamed. She was pointing at a small red and yellow panel on the bulkhead near his crash couch. Years of shipboard training made a path through the anoxia and depressurization, and he yanked the tab on the locker's seal and pulled the door open. Inside were a white first aid kit marked with the ancient Red Cross symbol, half a dozen oxygen masks, and a sealed bag of hardened plastic discs attached to a glue gun. The emergency seal kit. He snatched it. "Just the gun," Naomi yelled at him. He wasn't sure if her voice sounded distant because of the thin air, or because the pressure drop had blown his eardrums. Holden yanked the gun free from the bag of patches and threw it at her. She ran a bead of instant sealing glue around the edge of her 3-ring binder. She tossed the gun to Amos, who caught it with an effortless backhand motion and put a seal around his dinner tray. The whistling stopped, replaced by the hiss of the atmosphere system as it labored to bring the pressure back up to normal. 15 seconds. Everyone looked at Shed. Without the vacuum, his blood was pouring out into a floating red sphere just above his neck, like a hideous cartoon replacement for his head. "Jesus Christ, boss," Amos said, looking away from Shed to Naomi. He snapped his teeth closed with an audible click and shook his head. "What?" "Gas around," Alex said. "Those ships have railguns." Belt ships with railguns? Amos said. Did they get a fucking navy and no one told me? Jim, the hallway outside and the cabin on the other side are both in vacuum, Naomi said. The ship's compromised. Holden started to respond, then caught a good look at the binder Naomi had glued over the breach. The white cover was stamped with black letters that read MCRN Emergency Procedures. He had to suppress a laugh that would almost certainly go manic on him. Jim, Naomi said, her voice worried. I'm okay, Naomi, Holden replied, then took a deep breath. How long do those patches hold? Naomi shrugged with her hands, then started pulling her hair behind her head and tying it up with a red elastic band. Longer than the air will last. If everything around us is in vacuum, that means the cabin's running on emergency bottles. No recycling. I don't know how much each... Alex said. We come over here in our enviro suits, they'd just have taken them away. Could have tried. Be my guest, partner. Naomi sharply said, hey, but then nothing more. No one was talking about Shed. They were working hard not to look at the body. Holden cleared his throat to get everyone's attention, then floated to Shed's couch, drawing their eyes with him. He paused a moment, letting everyone get a good look at the decapitated body, then pulled a blanket from the storage drawer beneath the couch and strapped it down over Shed's body with the couch restraints. Shed's been killed. We're in deep peril. Arguing won't extend our lives 1 second, Holden said, looking at each member of his crew in turn. What will? No one spoke. Holden turned to Naomi first. Naomi, what will keep us alive longer than we can do right now? He asked. I'll see if I can find the emergency air.
Mom, the sun's shining on your
built for
legs.
6, and there are 4 of us.
Thank you, though.
I might be able to turn the flow down and stretch it longer. Good. Thank you. Alex? If there's anyone other than us, they'll be looking for survivors. I'll start pounding on the bulkhead. They won't hear it in the vacuum, but if there are cabins with air, the sound will travel down the metal. Good plan. I refuse to believe we're the only ones left on this ship, Holden said. Then turned to Amos. Amos? Let me check on that comm panel. Might be able to get the bridge or damage control or shit, something. Amos replied. Thanks. I'd love to let someone know we're still here, Holden said. People moved off to work while Holden floated in the air next to Shed. Naomi began yanking access panels off the bulkheads. Alex, hands pressed against a couch for leverage, lay on the deck and began to kick the bulkhead with his boots. The room vibrated slightly with each booming kick. Amos pulled a multi-tool out of his pocket and began taking the comm panel apart. When Holden was sure everyone was busy, he put one hand on Shed's shoulder, just below the blanket's spreading red stain. I'm sorry, he whispered to the body. His eyes burned, and he pressed them into the back of his thumbs. The comm unit was hanging out of the bulkhead on wires when it buzzed once, loudly. Amos yelped and pushed off hard enough to fly. Across the room. Holden caught him, wrenching his shoulder by trying to arrest the momentum of one. Grabbed something, much restraint, and wrapped it around his hand and forearm. When the hatch opened, Holden expected all the air to rush out. Instead, there was a loud crack. Bits of plastic had been sealed to the walls, creating an ad hoc airlock. The walls of the new chamber bowed out dangerously with the air pressure, but they held. Inside the newly created lock, Lieutenant Kelly and 3 of his Marines wore heavy vacuum-rated armor and carried enough weaponry to fight several minor wars. The Marines moved quickly into the room, weapons ready, and then sealed
the bad drive in front of us.
One of them tossed a large bag at Holden. 5 vac suits. Get them on, Kelly said. His eyes moved to the bloody blanket covering Shed, then to the 2 improvised patches. Casualty? Our medic, Shed Garvey, Holden replied. Yeah, what the fuck? Amos said loudly. Who's out there shooting the shit out of your fancy boat? Naomi and Alex said nothing, but started pulling the suits from the bag and handing them out. I don't know, Kelly said.
This guy's on the wrong lane.
But we're leaving right now. I've been ordered to get you off this ship in an escape craft. We've got less than 10 minutes to make it to the hangar bay.
He made an illegal
Take
lane
possession of the
change.
ship and get out of this combat area. Dress fast. Holden put on his suit.
So obviously
The
he's too impatient.
implications of their evacuation racing through his mind.
He'll be in an early grave.
Lieutenant, is the ship coming apart? He asked. Not yet, but we're being boarded. Then why are we leaving? We're losing. Kelly didn't tap his foot while waiting for them to seal into their suits. Holden guessed this was only because the Marines had their magnetic boots turned on. As soon as everyone had given the thumbs up, Kelly did a quick radio check on each suit, then headed back into the corridor. With 8 people in it, 4 of them in powered armor, the mini airlock was tight. Kelly pulled a heavy knife from a sheath on his chest and slashed the plastic barrier open in one quick movement. The hatch behind them slammed shut, and the air in the corridor vanished in the soundless ripple of plastic flaps. Kelly charged into the corridor with the crew scrambling to keep up. We are moving with all speed to the Keel elevator banks, Kelly said through the radio link. They're locked down because of the boarding alarm, but I can get the doors open on one and we'll float down the shaft to the hangar bay. Everything is on the double. If you see boarders, do not stop. Keep moving at all times. We'll handle the hostiles. Roger that? Roger, Lieutenant. Holden gasped out. Taking a flagship CIC is a strategist's wet dream. Cut the chatter, Kelly said. Holden ignored him. That means they'll blow the core rather than let that happen, right? Yep, Alex replied. Standard ops for boarders. Marines hold the bridge, CIC and engineering. If any of the 3 is breached, the other 2 flip the switch. The ship turns into a star for a few seconds. Standard ops, Kelly growled. Those are my friends. Sorry, LT, Alex replied. I served on the Bandon. Don't mean to make light. They turned a corner and the elevator bank came into view. All 8 elevators were closed and sealed. The heavy pressure doors had slammed shut when the ship was holed. Gomez, run the bypass, Kelly said. Mole, Dookie, watch those corridors. 2 of the Marines spread out, watching the hallways through their gun sights. The 3rd moved to one of the elevator doors and started doing something complicated to the controls. Holden motioned his crew to the wall, out of the firing lines. The deck vibrated slightly from time to time beneath his feet. The enemy ships wouldn't still be firing, not with their boarders inside. It must be small arms fire and light explosives. But as they stood there in the perfect quiet of vacuum, everything that was happening took on a distant and surreal feeling. Holden recognized that his mind wasn't working the way it should be. Trauma reaction. The destruction of the Canterbury. The deaths of Ade and McDowell. And now, someone had killed
Looks like
Shed
some
in
people
his
are
bunk.
camping over here.
It was too much. He couldn't process it. He felt the scene around him grow more and more distant. Holden looked behind him at Naomi, Alex, and Amos. They stared back, faces ashen and ghostly in the green light of their suit displays. Gomez pumped his fist in triumph as the outer pressure door slid open, revealing the elevator doors. Kelly gestured to his men. The one called Mole turned around and started to walk to the elevator when his face disintegrated in a spray of pebble-shaped bits of armored glass and blood. His armored torso, and the corridor bulkhead beside him bloomed in 100 small detonations and puffs of smoke. His body jerked and swayed, attached to the floor by magnetic boots. Holden's sense of unreality washed away in adrenaline. The fire spraying across the wall and Mole's body was high explosive rounds from a rapid-fire weapon. The comm channel filled with yelling from the Marines and Holden's own crew. To Holden's left, Gomez yanked the elevator doors open, using the augmented strength of his powered armor.